The courtroom was
Your Honor,
silent as Kate Morrison
we ask for
collapsed on the
immediate
witness stand.
dismissal.
Her
There
husband
is
Marcus
simply no
rushed forward,
evidence connecting
playing
my
the
client to the
concerned
crime.
spouse perfectly. But behind him, his mistress Vanessa smiled. A small, triumphant smile. Because after 8 months of systematically poisoning Kate, making everyone believe she was losing her mind, they had finally won. Or so they thought.
Help!
What they didn't know
I need
was
help.
that Judge Reed had
Get a
received
doctor,
secret
quickly!
recording 2
Someone
weeks
call an
earlier.
ambulance.
A recording she couldn't use until Kate's blood test results came back from the hospital. And when the judge pressed play on that recording, Vanessa's smile disappeared forever. This is the story of the perfect crime that almost worked. If this sounds insane, wait until you hear what happens next. Let's dive in. And if you love justice being served, hit that like button and subscribe for more incredible true stories. The fluorescent lights of the Multnomah County Courthouse hummed overhead, a sound that drilled into Kate Morrison's skull like a dentist's drill. She gripped the witness stand's oak railing, her knuckles white, trying to anchor herself to something, anything solid. The room was spinning, not dramatically, but in that slow, sickening way that meant her body was giving up. "Mrs. Blackwell," the attorney's voice sliced through the fog. Richard Sterling, her husband's lawyer, stood before her in a charcoal suit that probably cost more than her car payment. "I asked you a simple question. What day of the week is today?" Kate opened her mouth. The answer should have been easy. She'd gotten dressed this morning, driven here, walked into this courtroom, but the days had blurred together into a watercolor mess of confusion and exhaustion. It's Tuesday," she whispered. A ripple of murmurs went through the gallery. Richard Sterling's lips curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. "Mrs. Blackwell, today is Friday. You've been on this stand for 20 minutes, and this is the 3rd time you've been unable to answer a basic factual question." Kate's eyes found her husband in the front row. Marcus Blackwell sat ramrod straight, his handsome face arranged in an expression of profound concern. He was 40 years old but looked 35, with salt and pepper hair that made him look distinguished rather than aging. The cameras loved him. Portland loved him. Everyone loved Councilman Marcus Blackwell, the progressive champion running for mayor on a platform of transparency and compassion. Behind him, perfectly positioned to be in his line of sight but not obviously connected, sat Vanessa Price, 29 years old, blonde, sharp as a scalpel in a cream-colored suit. Her title was Chief of Staff, but Kate knew better. Vanessa's green eyes met Kate's, and for just a fraction of a second, the corner of her mouth lifted. Not a smile? Exactly, something smaller, something satisfied. "Mrs. Blackwell," Richard Sterling continued, his voice taking on a tone of false sympathy that made Kate's stomach churn. "You've testified that you believe your husband has been, and I quote, poisoning you. Is that correct?" "Yes," Kate said, her voice stronger now. "I know how it sounds. But you also testified that you have no memory of sending threatening text messages to your husband, despite digital forensic evidence proving the messages came from your phone. Is that correct?" "I don't remember sending them because I didn't." "And you have no memory of the driving incident on October 15th, when your Tesla was recorded on its own dash cam swerving into a residential mailbox?" "Correct." The room was tilting now. Kate could feel sweat beating on her upper lip, could feel her heart hammering in her chest in a rhythm that felt wrong, too fast, too irregular. "I was drugged," she said, but her voice came out thin and desperate. "I've been trying to tell everyone. I'm being drugged. I'm being gaslighted. Your Honor." Richard Sterling turned to the judge, a woman in her 60s with iron gray hair and eyes that missed nothing. "The defense would like to enter Exhibit J, the psychiatric evaluation conducted last month." Kate watched as a manila folder was passed to Judge Evelyn Reed. She knew what was in it. The Dr. Marcus had insisted she see, the one who diagnosed her with anxiety and recommended medication she refused to take. The report that made her sound paranoid, delusional, unstable. "Mrs. Blackwell suffers from acute anxiety with paranoid features," Richard Sterling read aloud. "She demonstrates obsessive focus on perceived betrayals and shows signs of dissociative episodes." The examining physician notes that Mrs. Blackwell became agitated when questioned about her alcohol consumption and refused to acknowledge the documented instances of erratic behavior. Kate tried to stand, to defend herself, but her legs wouldn't cooperate. The metallic taste in her mouth, the one that had haunted her for 8 months, was stronger now. She looked at Marcus again, and this time his mask slipped for just a second. His eyes were cold, calculating. Then the concern was back. The worried husband watching his sick wife fall apart. She looked at Vanessa. The smirk was wider now, more confident. Vanessa's phone was out, positioned low but clearly recording, documenting the collapse for some future use, some future narrative about the unstable wife who couldn't handle her husband's success. Your Honor, Richard Sterling's voice seemed to come from very far away. My client has tried everything. Therapy, intervention, support. But Mrs. Blackwell's delusions are escalating. She's lost her job, alienated her friends, and now she's making wild accusations in open court. We're asking for an emergency psychiatric evaluation and temporary conservatorship until... Kate never heard the rest. The room dissolved into black static, and the last thing she registered was the sound of her own body hitting the floor. A sick, heavy thump that echoed in the sudden silence of the courtroom. Kate Morrison had always trusted her instincts. It was what made her good at her job as a pharmaceutical sales director for Cascade Health Solutions, where reading people was just as important as knowing the science. When something felt wrong, it usually was. The first time she noticed the wrongness was on a Tuesday in March. She'd come home from a conference in Seattle to find Marcus in the kitchen, mixing something in the expensive Vitamix blender they'd gotten as a wedding gift. The sound covered her entrance, and she stood in the doorway for a moment, watching her husband of 6 years measure out powder from an unmarked container into her morning smoothie cup, the purple one she used every day. "Hey," she said, and Marcus jumped, actually jumped, sloshing the green mixture across the counter. "Kate, you're home early." His smile was quick, natural, the one that had convinced Portland voters he was one of them, despite coming from old timber money. "I was making your smoothie, the wellness blend you like." "That's sweet, but I can make my own breakfast." She moved toward him, and he shifted, just slightly, blocking her view of the counter. The unmarked container was gone, disappeared into the cabinet above the sink in one smooth motion. "You work too hard. Let me take care of you." He held out the purple cup, and the green mixture inside looked normal. Spinach, banana, the vanilla protein powder she bought at Whole Foods. "Drink up. You've got that big presentation today." Kate took the cup, but something in her chest tightened. She'd been feeling off lately. Dizzy spells, memory gaps, a constant metallic taste in her mouth that the dentist couldn't explain. 3 doctors had run tests that all came back normal, eventually diagnosing stress. "Actually, I'm not that hungry." She set the cup on the counter. "I'll grab something at the office." Marcus's eyes darkened for just a fraction of a second. Then the smile was back. "Sure, babe. Whatever you want." That night, Kate did something she'd never done in 6 years of marriage. She went through Marcus's office. The brownstone they'd bought in the Pearl District had a small room he used for campaign work. Always locked, always private. She told herself she was being paranoid, that the smoothie thing was nothing, that she was just stressed from work. The key was in his sock drawer, exactly where she expected it to be. Men were predictable that way. The office was neat, organized. Campaign posters for his upcoming mayoral run covered one wall. His degrees from Reed College and Georgetown Law hung on another. His desk held the usual laptop, files, framed photos of them on their wedding day. But the locked drawer in the filing cabinet, that was different. Inside, Kate found a second phone. Not Marcus's iPhone with the Portland Skyline case, but a basic Android with no case at all. She powered it on, and her stomach dropped when she saw the message thread. No contact name, just a number. "He's getting suspicious. Be more careful. Marcus, 2 weeks ago. I'm always careful. She's too out of it to notice anyway. The dose is perfect. Unknown number. When she passed out at the charity gala, I thought we were done. Marcus, that's the beauty of it. Everyone thinks she's just stressed. Classic executive burnout. Give it 3 more months and we can move forward with the plan." Unknown number. Kate's hands shook as she scrolled back further. Months of messages, increasingly intimate, increasingly calculating. Photos too. Marcus and a blonde woman she didn't recognize, in restaurants Kate had never been to. in hotel rooms that definitely weren't their bedroom. She took photos of everything with her own phone, her heart hammering so hard she thought she might pass out. Then she put the burner phone back exactly as she'd found it, locked the drawer, returned the key. That night, she confronted him. It was a mistake. "I found your phone," she said over dinner, her voice steadier than she felt. "I know about her. I know what you've been doing." Marcus set down his wine glass slowly. They were at Andina, their favorite Peruvian restaurant, surrounded by happy couples and soft lighting. He'd chosen a public place deliberately. She realized now. Somewhere she couldn't make a scene. "Kate," he said, and his voice was so sad, so genuinely hurt, that for a second she doubted what she'd seen. "I know things have been hard. The campaign stress, your job pressure, but accusing me of, what exactly are you accusing me of? I saw the messages, the photos. You're having an affair with someone, and you've been drugging me." The words sounded insane even as she said them. Around them, conversations continued. Silverware clinked against plates. Marcus reached across the table and took her hand, his grip firm, almost too firm. "Sweetheart, I don't have a secret phone. I think you need to hear yourself right now. You're making up conspiracy theories, accusing me of drugging you. Do you realize how that sounds?" His voice dropped lower. "I'm worried about you. I think the stress is making you paranoid. Maybe we should find you someone to talk to." "I took pictures," Kate said, pulling her phone out. "I have proof." But when she opened her photo app, the images were gone. Every single one. She scrolled frantically, but there was nothing except the usual photos campaign events. Dinners out, her and Marcus smiling at the camera. "The clouds sync," Marcus said gently. "Remember when I set up our shared iCloud, I was trying to help you stay organized." "But Kate, if you're deleting things and forgetting, that's a symptom. That's exactly what I'm worried about." Kate stared at her phone, her mind racing. She hadn't deleted anything. She knew she hadn't, but the photos were gone, and Marcus was looking at her with such concern, such love, that doubt crept in like smoke. "I know what I saw," she whispered. "I know you think you do," Marcus replied, "and that's what scares me." The next morning, Kate woke up in their bed with no memory of leaving the restaurant. Marcus was already up, making her smoothie, wearing his running gear and looking perfectly refreshed. "How are you feeling?" he asked, handing her the purple cup. "You were pretty out of it last night. I had to practically carry you to the car." Kate took the cup automatically, then stopped. The green mixture inside looked normal, but her hand was shaking. "What's in this?" "Same as always. Spinach, banana, protein powder. That probiotic you like." Marcus's smile was warm, caring. "Drink up. You'll feel better." Kate looked at her husband, at the man she'd loved and trusted for 6 years, and she dumped the smoothie down the sink. "I'm calling a private investigator," she said. "If I'm paranoid, he'll find nothing. If I'm right, then you'll have proof." Marcus finished. His expression didn't change, but something in his eyes went very, very cold. "That's fair. Do what you need to do to feel safe. Kate, I just want you to be okay." He kissed her forehead and left for his morning run. Kate stood in the kitchen and wondered if she was losing her mind. She wasn't. But by the time she figured that out, it would almost be too late. Daniel Grant had been a detective with Portland Police Bureau for 20 years before a nasty divorce and a drinking problem had ended his career. Now he ran a small PI firm out of an office above a Vietnamese restaurant on Southeast Division, and he specialized in cases the big firms didn't want: messy domestics, cheating spouses, people who needed the truth but couldn't afford fancy retainers. Kate Morrison walked into his office on a Thursday afternoon, and Daniel knew immediately she was in trouble. Not the crying, emotional trouble of most divorce cases. This was different. The woman in front of him was pale, thin in a way that suggested weight loss she hadn't planned, and her hands shook slightly as she filled out the intake forms. "Tell me what you need," Daniel said, once she was seated across from his cluttered desk. "I think my husband is poisoning me." Kate's voice was steady, but her eyes told a different story. "I know how that sounds. Everyone thinks I'm crazy. Maybe I am crazy. but I need to know for sure. Daniel had heard a lot of wild theories over the years. Paranoid delusions, conspiracy theories, accusations born from hurt feelings and broken trust. But something about the way Kate Morrison spoke made him pay attention. "Walk me through it," he said, pulling out a legal pad. "Start from the beginning." She did. The smoothies, the memory gaps, the secret phone she'd found and then couldn't prove existed, the photos that had disappeared from her phone, the increasing isolation as friends and coworkers started treating her like she was fragile, broken. "I got fired last week," Kate said, and a tear finally escaped down her cheek. 26 anonymous complaints about my performance. Missing meetings I could have sworn I'd attended. Client presentations I have no memory of skipping. My boss said I seemed disconnected, that I'd shown up to work drunk twice. Were you drunk? I haven't had a drink in 5 years. I'm a recovering alcoholic. Mr. Grant, 5 years sober, going to meetings, doing the work. I don't even keep alcohol in the house. But somehow there are photos of me passed out with wine bottles. Photos I don't remember being taken. From nights I don't remember living." Daniel wrote quickly, his detective instincts kicking in. "Your husband, Marcus Blackwell, the city councilman, running for mayor, and his new chief of staff, Vanessa Price. I think they're working together. I think this is about money and politics and getting me out of the way." "Do you have a prenup?" Kate shook her head. "No. Everything we have is joint. The house in Pearl District, the investment accounts, my inheritance from my mother, 2.3 million in liquid assets, another 800,000 in retirement accounts. If we divorce and I'm competent, I get half. If I'm ruled incompetent, he gets control of everything," Daniel finished. "And you get committed somewhere quiet." "Exactly, Tapama." Daniel leaned back in his chair, studying this woman who was either a victim or genuinely delusional. His gut said victim, but his gut had been wrong before. "I'll take the case, but I need to be clear, Mrs. Morrison. If I find evidence that you're having psychological issues, I'm ethically obligated to recommend you seek help. I won't lie to make you feel better. I don't want you to lie. I want you to find the truth." Kate pulled out a checkbook with the trembling hands. "Whatever it takes. I need to know I'm not losing my mind. I'll start with basic surveillance. Your husband, this Vanessa Price. See if there's an affair. See what their patterns look like. Then we'll go from there." Daniel took the check she wrote, a $5,000 retainer that would cover 2 weeks of work. "One more thing. Do you have somewhere safe you can stay if your suspicions are correct? I'm staying in the house. If I leave, he wins. If I let him push me out, everyone will say I was the unstable one who abandoned her marriage." Kate stood up, and despite her physical fragility, there was steel in her voice. "I'm not running, Mr. Grant. I'm fighting." After she left, Daniel sat for a long time staring at the check. Then he made a phone call to an old friend at the crime lab. "Jerry, it's Daniel. I need a favor. If I wanted to test someone for chemical exposure, something that wouldn't show up on standard tox screens, what would I be looking for?" The answer was enlightening and terrifying. 10 days later, Daniel sat in his car across from City Hall, watching Marcus Blackwell and Vanessa Price leave through the side entrance at 9 p.m. They walked separately to the parking garage, but their body language spoke volumes. The way she looked at him, the way he touched her arm in passing. Classic affair markers. He followed them to the Sentinel Hotel, watched them enter separately. Then together in the elevator security footage, he'd sweet-talked from the bellhop. Room 1214, registered to a shell company Daniel had already traced back to Vanessa's personal bank account. He had photos, video, timeline documentation. The affair was real, indisputable, but that wasn't enough. Kate had been right about that part, but she needed proof of the bigger crime. That's when Daniel made his most illegal, most desperate move. He planted a listening device in Marcus's City Hall office, tucked behind a campaign poster where no one would look. It was a felony. It would cost him his license if caught. The evidence would be inadmissible in court, but sometimes you needed to know the truth before you could find the legal path to prove it. For 6 days, he got nothing but boring city council business. Budget meetings, constituent services, policy discussions. He was about to give up when Vanessa's voice came through the feed. sharp and annoyed. He's getting suspicious. Be more careful. Marcus's response was muffled, then clearer. She hired a private investigator, some washed-up cop named Grant. How do you know? I have access to her email. She's sloppy with her passwords. He's doing basic surveillance, affair documentation. Nothing we can't handle. We need to accelerate the timeline. Vanessa's voice took on a harder edge. The filing deadline for the mayor's race is in 3 weeks. If she's coherent enough to contest the divorce, it'll drag into the campaign season. We can't have that. I'm using the full dose now. 2 drops of the binder in her morning coffee, 1 full capsule of the lithium in her evening tea. She's barely functional. Daniel's blood ran cold. He pressed the record button, making absolutely sure he was capturing every word. What about side effects? Vanessa asked. That's the beauty of lithium orotate. It's a wellness supplement, available online, completely legal. High doses cause the same symptoms as stress confusion, memory problems, tremors. Every doctor she sees tells her it's anxiety. They're all basically doing our work for us. And when this is over, a pause, then Marcus's voice, cold and clinical. I have a facility picked out in Arizona, memory care unit. Once she's declared incompetent, I'll have guardianship. She'll be comfortable, well cared for, and completely out of the picture. In a few years, if necessary, we can revisit her situation. You mean? Vanessa's voice dropped. I mean we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. Right now, I need you focused on the campaign. The money from Kate's inheritance will fund our media blitz. By the time anyone questions anything, I'll be mayor, you'll be my deputy mayor, and Kate will be a tragic footnote about the pressures of political life. Daniel sat in his car, the recording playing through his headphones, and felt sick. This wasn't just an affair. This was attempted murder dressed up as mental health crisis. This was systematic, calculated destruction of a human being. He called Kate immediately. We need to meet now. I have something, but it's bad. They met at a coffee shop in Selwood, far from the Pearl District, far from anywhere Marcus might look. Daniel played her the recording on his phone, watching her face go from hope to horror to something harder. That's evidence, she said when it finished. That's proof. We can take this to the police. It's illegally obtained evidence from an unauthorized wiretap. Any decent lawyer will get it thrown out. And I'll go to jail for electronic surveillance crimes. Daniel's hands were shaking. But Kate, we know the truth now. We know what we're looking for. The lithium orotate, the heavy metal binder. We can test for those specifically. We can build a legitimate case. How long will that take? Weeks, maybe months. We need medical documentation. We need to catch him in the act. We need... Kate's phone buzzed. She looked at the screen and went pale. It's my lawyer. Marcus filed for divorce this morning. Emergency motion for psychiatric evaluation and temporary conservatorship. The hearing is in 3 days. 3 days, not weeks, not months. 3 days before Marcus would have everything he needed to lock her away and take everything she had. Daniel looked at this woman who'd trusted him to save her, and he made a decision. I'm sending this recording to someone who can help. Judge Evelyn Reed. She has a reputation for giving a damn about victims. It's a Hail Mary, but it's all we've got. Will she listen? I don't know, but we're about to find out. That night, Daniel mailed a USB drive from a post office in Gresham, addressed to Judge Reed with a simple note, in the interest of justice. The hospital talk screen will confirm everything. Then he waited and prayed he hadn't just destroyed Kate Morrison's last chance at survival. The 3 days before the hearing passed in a blur of preparation and terror. Thomas Walsh, Kate's divorce attorney, was overwhelmed. He practiced family law in a small firm, handling custody disputes and asset division. Not this kind of warfare. Richard Sterling is going to tear you apart on the stand, Thomas warned. He'll make you look paranoid, delusional, exactly what Marcus is claiming. The night before the hearing, Jennifer Hart called from San Francisco. I believe you, Kate, but I need you to consider the possibility that stress really is affecting you, that maybe you need help. Kate realized even her closest friend couldn't fully believe her. If you can't believe me, I don't need you here. She hung up, alone in the brownstone she'd once loved. The Multnomah County courthouse was packed. Reporters filled the back rows. Marcus sat at the plaintiff's table looking somber in a navy suit. Vanessa Price sat 3 rows back, close enough that Marcus could see her, wearing cream and pearls with an expression of concerned sympathy. Judge Evelyn Reed entered, 62 with iron gray hair and sharp eyes that had seen every lie. This is a hearing on the petition for emergency psychiatric evaluation and temporary conservatorship. Mr. Sterling, you may begin. Richard Sterling stood, and Kate's stomach dropped. He presented evidence, methodically threatening text messages Kate didn't remember sending. Photos of her passed out with alcohol. Her Tesla dash cam showing her clearly impaired. Complaints from her former employer documenting erratic behavior. We have Dr. Alan Foster's psychiatric evaluation. Richard continued. His diagnosis is clear acute anxiety with paranoid features, possible dissociative disorder, likely alcohol relapse. Then Marcus took the stand. He was perfect, his voice breaking at precise moments, eyes misting with tears. I found her unconscious with an empty vodka bottle. When she woke up, she didn't remember drinking at all. She accused me of trying to hurt her. It broke my heart. And the affair allegations, Richard asked gently. Kate has become fixated on my chief of staff. It's part of the paranoia Dr. Foster documented. The lunch recess brought brief hope. Thomas showed Kate her Apple Health data on his laptop, graphs tracking heart rate and sleep patterns over 8 months. This pattern is consistent with chemical exposure, not psychological stress, Thomas said. I have a toxicologist willing to testify. If we can get the judge to order a comprehensive toxicology screen. His phone buzzed. His face went gray. Oh no, an email from Paul Morrison, Kate's father. He wanted to testify about Kate's mental health struggles growing up. Marcus paid for my dad's cancer treatment, Kate said, understanding flooding through her. $240,000. Dad thinks he's saving my life by helping commit me. When court resumed, Paul Morrison took the stand, 65 and cancer-free thanks to Marcus's generosity. He destroyed his daughter with love. Kate has always been fragile, Paul said, voice heavy with concern. As a teenager, she had episodes, depression, paranoid thoughts. We got her help, but I've always worried. When Marcus called to tell me she was struggling again, I wasn't surprised. Her mother had similar issues. Kate wanted to scream it was a lie, but she couldn't breathe. Even her own father had been turned against her. Kate's testimony was a disaster. Richard Sterling was surgical in his destruction. Every answer sounded defensive, paranoid, exactly what a delusional person would say. Mrs. Blackwell, you claimed yesterday was Tuesday. It's Friday. You said you've never been to Seattle. Your own Instagram shows you there last month. You texted your husband, I'll burn this house down. Did you mean that? Kate tried to explain each one, but the harder she fought, the crazier she looked. Then came the final question. Mrs. Blackwell, have you ever wondered if maybe everyone else is right and you're wrong, that you're not the victim of conspiracy, but simply a woman struggling with addiction and mental illness who needs help? Kate opened her mouth to deny it, but surrounded by evidence of her instability, betrayed by her father, doubted by her best friend, facing a judge who looked at her with pity, Kate wondered if she really was losing her mind. The room tilted, the metallic taste intensified. Vanessa's smile in the gallery widened victoriously. Kate felt herself falling, the world dissolving into darkness as her body gave up. The last sound was Marcus's voice, perfectly anguished, shouting her name as cameras flashed and reporters surged forward to capture the collapse of the councilman's troubled wife. The first thing Kate registered was the absence of fog. For 8 months, her thoughts had moved through thick syrup, everything delayed and disconnected. But now, when lying in a hospital bed with an IV in her arm and monitors beeping steadily, her mind was clear, painfully, brilliantly clear. Kate, can you hear me? The voice belonged to Thomas Walsh, and when Kate opened her eyes, her lawyer was leaning over the bed rail, his face creased with worry and something else. Hope. I passed out, Kate said her throat was dry, raw. In court, I remember Marcus, and Vanessa was smiling. And then, you've been unconscious for 6 hours. You're at Oregon Health and Science University Hospital. Kate, something incredible happened. Thomas pulled a chair closer, speaking quickly and quietly. Judge Reed ordered an emergency toxicology panel, not standard drug screening, a full comprehensive analysis including heavy metals and atypical compounds. She called the hospital directly and spoke to Dr. Rebecca Mills. Rebecca Mills appeared in the doorway as if summoned. She was 40 years old, competent and no-nonsense in navy scrubs, with dark hair pulled back and eyes that assessed Kate with professional intensity. Mrs. Blackwell, Dr. P.O. Mills said, pulling up Kate's chart on a tablet. You are a very lucky woman. If you'd continued ingesting what we found in your system for another few weeks, the organ damage would have been irreversible. What did you find? Kate's voice was barely a whisper. Lithium orotate, in concentrations nearly 4 times the maximum recommended supplement dose. A heavy metal chelation compound commonly sold as a detox supplement, but toxic in the amounts present in your blood. And trace amounts of benzodiazepines that explain the memory gaps and blackout episodes. Mills sat on the edge of the bed, her expression grave. Mrs. Blackwell, in my 15 years practicing emergency medicine, I've seen 3 other cases like this. All 3 were instances of systematic poisoning by intimate partners. This wasn't self-inflicted. This was done to you. Kate closed her eyes, and for the first time in 8 months, the tears that came were relief. I'm not crazy. No, you were being poisoned. Slowly, methodically, in a way designed to mimic mental illness rather than physical ailment. Whoever did this knew exactly what they were doing. My husband, his name is Marcus Blackwell. Dr. Mills nodded. The toxicology report has been submitted to the court and to the Portland Police Bureau. Detective Morrison from the Major Crimes Unit is on his way to take your statement. Wait, Kate said, her brain finally working at full speed. Detective Morrison, that's my maiden name. Apparently, Judge Reed specifically requested someone with no connection to your husband's political circles. Detective James Morrison is from Seattle, transferred here last month. No relation. The detective arrived 20 minutes later, a tall man in his 40s with graying hair and the careful manner of someone who'd seen too much human cruelty. He recorded Kate's statement, asked precise questions, and showed no visible reaction when she described the smoothies, the tea, the systematic gaslighting. Ma'am, I need to ask you something difficult, Detective Morrison said when she finished. Did you ever suspect your husband was capable of this? Kate thought back to their wedding day, to 6 years of what she'd believed was a happy marriage, to the man who'd held her hand when her mother died and promised to always protect her. No, I thought I knew him. I thought he loved me. That's what makes domestic cases so difficult. The person you trust most becomes the weapon. Detective Morrison closed his notebook. Mrs. Blackwell, I'm going to be frank with you. Your husband is a city councilman running for mayor. He has money, connections, and an army of lawyers. This case is going to be high profile and ugly. Are you prepared for that? Detective, I've spent 8 months thinking I was losing my mind. I've lost my job, my friends, my father's trust. There's nothing Marcus can do to me that's worse than what he's already done. Kate's voice was steady, cold. I want him arrested. I want everyone to know what he did. Then that's exactly what's going to happen. Back in the courthouse, the drama was unfolding without Kate. Judge Reed had reconvened the hearing in her chambers, summoning both legal teams for a private conference. Marcus sat at the table looking concerned and confused, the perfect mask still in place. Vanessa had been barred from the chambers but waited in the hallway, her phone out, texting frantically. Mr. Sterling, Judge Reed said, her voice arctic. Your client's wife is in the hospital. Preliminary toxicology results show substances in her system that explain every symptom you've been arguing proves mental illness. Substances that don't appear in her medical history as prescribed medications. Would you care to explain that? Richard Sterling's composure cracked for the first time. He looked at Marcus, really looked at him, and Kate would have paid money to see the moment the lawyer realized his client was guilty. Your Honor, we'll need time to review these findings. This is highly irregular. The toxicology screen was ordered without proper authorization. The toxicology screen was ordered as part of emergency medical treatment for a patient who collapsed in my courtroom. Judge Reed cut him off. I don't need authorization to ensure someone receives proper medical care. But I do find it interesting that the specific compounds found match substances that would be readily available as dietary supplements, substances that could be administered without a prescription, substances that cause symptoms nearly identical to anxiety and paranoia. Marcus finally spoke. Your Honor, I don't understand what you're implying. Kate has been taking various supplements for years. If something in her regimen was toxic, save it for the police. Mr. Blackwell, Judge Reed's eyes were cold. Because as of 10 minutes ago, the Portland Police Bureau has opened a criminal investigation into the systematic poisoning and abuse of your wife. This hearing is suspended pending that investigation. And Mr. Blackwell, I strongly suggest you retain criminal defense counsel. Marcus stood abruptly. This is outrageous. I'm a city councilman. I'm running for mayor. You can't just... I can, and I have... Bailiff, please escort Mr. Blackwell from my chambers. As Marcus was let out, his mask finally shattered. The concern was gone, replaced by cold rage. He found Vanessa in the hallway, and their whispered conversation was captured by a reporter's phone camera left running in her purse. How much did you give her this morning? Marcus hissed. The usual dose. 2 drops in her coffee. She shouldn't have collapsed until tonight. Well, she collapsed in court, and now they're testing her blood for everything. We need to... Vanessa's eyes widened. Marcus, that recording, the one the PI made, if they have that, they can't. It's illegal, inadmissible. As long as a uniformed officer approached. Marcus Blackwell, I need you to come with me for questioning regarding an ongoing investigation. The reporter who'd captured the whispered conversation uploaded it to Twitter within minutes. It went viral within the hour. By the time Kate was released from the hospital the next morning, Portland was in an uproar. Councilman Blackwell under investigation for spousal abuse. City official accused of poisoning wife to fund campaign. Kate Morrison Blackwell, victim or villain. The court of public opinion was divided, but the actual court was clear. Judge Reed issued an emergency order freezing all marital assets pending the criminal investigation. Marcus was released on $200,000 bail, but barred from contacting Kate or entering their shared home. Kate moved back into the brownstone with a police escort, and everything was exactly as she'd left it. The kitchen where Marcus had made her poison smoothies, the bedroom where he'd held her while lying to her face, the life she'd believed in, revealed as an elaborate stage set for her destruction. Jennifer Hart called. Kate, I saw the news. I'm so sorry. I should have believed you. I should have. You believed what everyone else believed. Marcus is very good at his job. Are you okay? Kate looked around the empty house, feeling the absence of fog in her mind, the absence of fear in her chest. I will be, but Jen, I can't talk right now. I'm not ready. I understand. Just please know I'm here when you are ready. Kate hung up and sat in the silence. She wasn't crazy. She'd been right all along. But vindication felt hollow when it came at the cost of everything else. Her phone buzzed. Daniel Grant. Kate, I need you to come to my office. There's something you need to hear. Daniel Grant's office smelled like stale coffee and old paper, a comforting mess after the sterile perfection of the hospital. Kate sat across from him, and for the first time since she'd hired him, the PI looked uncertain. What I'm about to play for you was obtained illegally, Daniel said. Okay, his hands wrapped around a chipped mug. I planted a listening device in Marcus's office at City Hall. No warrant, no authority, pure vigilante investigation. If this gets out, I'll lose my license permanently and probably face criminal charges. Then why are you showing me? Because Judge Reed received an anonymous USB drive containing this recording. Someone mailed it to her 2 weeks ago, and she sat on it because it was inadmissible. Fruit of the poison tree, legally speaking. But then you collapsed, and she ordered that talk screen, and suddenly the illegal recording was corroborated by legal medical evidence. Daniel pulled out a small recorder. Kate, this is going to be hard to hear. Are you ready? She nodded, and he pressed play. Marcus's voice filled the office, casual and cold. She's still not getting worse fast enough. Vanessa, are you sure you're using the full dose? Vanessa's voice responded, sharp and impatient. I'm using exactly what you told me. 2 drops of the binder in her morning tea and a full capsule of the lithium broken into her wellness smoothie. She said it tasted off yesterday. Let it taste off. She's so fogged she'll forget by lunchtime. The doctor just told her it was premenopausal stress again. He's literally doing our work for us. Kate listened to 8 minutes of Marcus and Vanessa discussing her poisoning with the casual tone of people planning a dinner party. They laughed. They strategized. They talked about the Arizona facility where Kate would spend her final years, comfortable but silenced, while Marcus used her inheritance to fund his political ascension. When it ended, Kate sat very still. Daniel watched her, concern etched on his weathered face. "Say something," he said finally. "Play it again." "Kate, I need to hear it again. I need to be absolutely sure." He played it again, and then once more, because Kate asked. She listened to her husband discuss her systematic destruction, and with each replay, something inside her hardened. The hurt calcified into something else, something colder. "That's his voice," she said. "That's definitely Marcus. And Vanessa, I recognize her tone, that edge she gets when she's annoyed. The Portland police have a copy, so does the district attorney's office. They're building a case. But Kate, this recording alone isn't enough. It's tainted evidence. They need more. What about the Venmo transactions, the wellness supplements? Can they trace those?" Daniel opened a file folder, spreading papers across his desk. "Already done. Vanessa purchased lithium orotate and heavy metal chelation supplements from 3 different online retailers over a 6-month period. Total spending, $1,400. She had them shipped to a P.O. box registered under a shell company, but the forensic accountants traced it back to her personal bank account. She paid for the P.O. box rental with her credit card, so they can prove she bought the materials, and that Marcus knew about it. There are text messages between them discussing the purchases, talking in code, but obvious enough. Did the supplements arrive? Yes, starting the new protocol tomorrow. They thought they were being careful. They weren't careful enough." Kate studied the documents, her pharmaceutical background kicking in. Lithium orotate is marketed as a mood stabilizer, available over the counter. High doses cause confusion, memory problems, tremors. The heavy metal binder would mask it on basic tests while adding its own neurological effects. It's actually brilliant in a horrifying way. The DA thinks they can prove conspiracy, attempted assault, fraud, and a list of other charges. But it'll take time. Marcus has already hired Fitzgerald and Stone, the best criminal defense firm in the state. Let him hire whoever he wants. I have the truth, and I have proof, and I'm not backing down. Daniel leaned back, studying her. "You're different, clearer. The fog is gone. 8 months of chemical-induced confusion, and it's finally gone. I can think again. Daniel, I can remember. And I'm going to make absolutely sure Marcus and Vanessa pay for what they did." "What about your father?" The question hung in the air. Kate thought about Paul Morrison, the man who'd raised her, who'd taught her to ride a bike and helped her move into her college dorm, the man who'd testified that she was unstable because Marcus had paid for his cancer treatment. "My father thought he was saving my life," Kate said finally. "He believed Marcus's lies because Marcus saved him first. That's complicated. I don't know if I can forgive him, but I understand why he did it. And your friend Jennifer. Also complicated. Everyone believed Marcus because he's charismatic and successful and plays the devoted husband perfectly. I'm not angry at them for being fooled. I'm angry at the people who did the fooling." A knock on the door interrupted them. Detective Morrison entered, his expression grim. "Mrs. Blackwell, I need you to come to the station. We're executing search warrants on your home and Mr. Blackwell's City Hall office. I'd like you there to identify any substances or materials that might be relevant." The search of Kate's home was surreal. Forensic technicians in white suits moved through her kitchen, photographing, swabbing, bagging evidence. They found the Vitamix blender with residue in the base. The cabinet where Marcus kept his wellness supplies yielded 3 unmarked containers, lithium orotate powder, heavy metal binder capsules, and a prescription bottle of lorazepam with the label removed. "The lorazepam explains the blackouts," Detective Morrison said, examining the bottle. "Small doses, administered irregularly, would cause memory gaps and disorientation. Combined with the lithium, it created a perfect storm of cognitive impairment. Kate stood in her own kitchen, watching strangers document the scene of her slow destruction. How long will the investigation take? Criminal cases of this complexity typically take 6 to 12 months. Your husband and Miss Price will likely be indicted within a few weeks, but the trial won't happen quickly. They'll file every motion they can think of to delay and discredit the evidence. I can wait. I've waited this long. The search of Marcus's City Hall office yielded even more records of Kate's medical appointments, notes about her symptoms, and a handwritten timeline tracking the progression of her poisoning. Marcus had documented everything, arrogant enough to believe he'd never be caught. But the most damning evidence came from Vanessa's apartment. Forensic accountants found a ledger, old-school pen and paper, detailing every cent she'd spent on the conspiracy, supplement purchases, P.O. box rental, even the $5,000 she'd paid to an anonymous source for Kate's private medical records. She kept receipts, Detective Morrison said, almost admiringly. Most criminals try to hide their tracks. She organized hers like a business expense report. Vanessa's compulsive about documentation, Kate said, and she runs Marcus's campaign like a military operation. Every dollar tracked, every decision justified. I guess she couldn't turn it off even when committing crimes. 3 weeks after Kate's collapse in court, the indictments came down. Marcus Blackwell and Vanessa Price were charged with conspiracy to commit assault, aggravated domestic violence, fraud, and attempted unlawful imprisonment. Bond was set at $500,000 each. Marcus made bail within hours, his family's timber money ensuring his temporary freedom. Vanessa sat in jail for 3 days before her parents, shocked and horrified, scraped together the bond. They both surrendered their passports and were fitted with GPS ankle monitors. The media coverage was relentless. Kate's doorbell rang constantly with reporters, her phone filled with interview requests. The story had everything: politics, betrayal, systematic abuse, a dramatic collapse in open court. Poisoned wife fights back, the Kate Morrison story. From victim to victor, how one woman exposed her husband's deadly secret. The dark side of political ambition. Kate ignored most of it. She was focused on recovery, on rebuilding her body and mind after 8 months of chemical assault. She went to physical therapy for the tremors. She saw a trauma counselor for the PTSD. She worked with a nutritionist to repair the damage to her organs. And slowly, carefully, she began to piece together the person she'd been before Marcus tried to erase her. 6 months after her collapse, Kate sat in a conference room at the Multnomah County District Attorney's office. Across from her sat Sarah Bennett, the prosecutor assigned to Marcus's case. Sarah was 38, sharp-eyed and relentless, with a reputation for winning cases everyone else considered unwinnable. "We have a problem," Sarah said without preamble. "Marcus's attorneys are filing a motion to suppress the recording. They're arguing it was obtained through illegal wiretapping. And even though it was corroborated by your medical records, the taint is too severe. If the judge grants the motion, we lose our most damaging piece of evidence." Kate's stomach dropped. Can they do that? They can try. Judge Patricia Winters will hear the motion next week. She's known for being strict about Fourth Amendment violations. If she sides with the defense, we'll still have the physical evidence, the supplements, the medical records. But without that recording, the case becomes circumstantial. A good defense attorney can create reasonable doubt around circumstantial evidence. "Marcus's attorneys are excellent," Kate said bitterly. "Richard Sullivan and his team have gotten politicians out of worse jams than this, which is why we need you to testify at the suppression hearing. Your account of what Marcus did, combined with the medical evidence, might persuade the judge that public interest outweighs the privacy violation." Sarah paused. "Kate, I need to warn you. The defense will try to destroy your credibility. They'll bring up your past, your recovery from alcoholism, every mistake you've ever made. It won't be easy. Nothing about this has been easy. What do you need me to do?" The suppression hearing was held in a smaller courtroom, closed to the public but open to press. Kate sat on a hard wooden bench, watching Marcus and Vanessa enter with their legal teams. They didn't look at her, didn't acknowledge her presence. They'd both lost weight, gained hollow eyes. The ankle monitors were visible under their professional clothes. Judge Patricia Winters was 60 years old, stern-faced, with 30 years on the bench. She listened to Richard Sullivan argue for 40 minutes about constitutional rights, privacy protections, and the inadmissibility of illegally obtained evidence. Your Honor, Richard said, his voice resonant with righteous indignation, my client is a public servant, but he's entitled to the same constitutional protections as any citizen. The recording in question was obtained through criminal activity. The private investigator, Daniel Grant, has admitted under oath that he planted the listening device without a warrant, without probable cause, without any legal authority whatsoever. To allow this evidence would set a dangerous precedent that the ends justify the means. Sarah stood when he finished. Your Honor, this isn't about constitutional theory. It's about stopping an ongoing crime. The recording came to the court's attention only after Mrs. Blackwell collapsed and medical tests confirmed she was being poisoned. The recording didn't create suspicion. It corroborated medical facts. We're not asking you to admit illegally obtained evidence. We're asking you to recognize that sometimes truth emerges from imperfect sources, and a woman's life was at stake. I'll hear from Mrs. Blackwell, Doranarum. Down, Judge Winters said. Kate took the stand, her palms sweating but her voice steady. Sarah walked her through the timeline, the symptoms, the gaslighting, the systematic destruction of her credibility. Kate spoke clearly, specifically, avoiding melodrama. Just facts. Mrs. Blackwell, Richard Sullivan began his cross-examination with false gentleness. You've had a difficult year, lost your job, lost your marriage, spent time hospitalized. That must have been traumatic. It was traumatic because I was being poisoned by my husband. Or you relapsed into alcoholism and created an elaborate conspiracy theory to avoid taking responsibility. His voice sharpened. You've been sober for 5 years before this, correct? That's a significant achievement. But relapse is common in recovery. Isn't it possible that the stress of your husband's campaign, the pressure of his success, caused you to start drinking again? No, the toxicology reports prove I was poisoned. The toxicology reports prove you had certain substances in your system, substances that are available over the counter, substances you could have taken yourself, either deliberately or as part of a wellness regimen gone wrong. Kate felt the old fear creeping back, the doubt Marcus had planted so carefully. But then she remembered Dr. Rebecca Mills's words, trust your body. If something feels wrong, it probably is. Mr. Sullivan, Kate said, looking directly at the jury of one, Judge Winters. I'm a pharmaceutical sales director. I understand drug interactions, dosing, side effects. If I'd been taking those supplements myself, I would have recognized the symptoms and stopped. But I didn't take them. My husband put them in my food and drinks every single day for 8 months while telling me I was going crazy. The recording proves his intent. The medical evidence proves the crime. And I'm sitting here recovered and clear-minded, proving that once the poisoning stopped, so did the symptoms. Richard Sullivan tried to recover, but the damage was done. Judge Winters called a recess, and when she returned 2 hours later, her decision was clear. This court recognizes that the recording was obtained illegally. Judge Winters said, under normal circumstances, such evidence would be suppressed. However, the circumstances here are far from normal. Mrs. Blackwell was the victim of an ongoing crime. The recording came to light through a third party, not through police misconduct. And critically, the recording's content has been independently corroborated by medical evidence that is unquestionably admissible. I find that the public interest in prosecuting systematic poisoning and domestic violence outweighs the privacy concerns. The motion to suppress is denied. Marcus's face went white. Vanessa closed her eyes. Their attorneys immediately announced they'd appeal, but everyone in the courtroom knew it was over. The recording would be played at trial, and once the jury heard Marcus discussing Kate's poisoning with casual cruelty, no amount of legal maneuvering would save him. Kate walked out of the courthouse into late afternoon sunshine. Daniel Grant was waiting on the steps. You did good in there, T. he said. I told the truth. Turns out that's powerful. The trial's set for 3 months from now. Are you ready? Kate thought about the question. Ready to face Marcus again. To sit in a courtroom and watch him try to twist reality one more time. Ready to have every detail of her trauma examined by strangers. Ready to see Vanessa? The woman who'd smiled while Kate suffered. I don't know if I'll ever be ready. Kate said honestly. But I'll be there, Marsha, and I'll keep telling the truth until everyone hears it. Her phone buzzed. A text from her father. Kate, can we talk? Please, I need to explain. I need you to understand. Dad. She stared at the message for a long moment. Paul Morrison had testified against her, had called her unstable, had helped Ed Marcus build the case for her incompetence. But he'd done it believing Marcus was saving her, not destroying her. And he'd lived with that guilt every day since learning the truth. Kate typed a response. Coffee, Thursday at 10, don't be late. Forgiveness would take time. Trust would take longer. But Kate was learning that recovery wasn't about erasing the past. It was about deciding what pieces to carry forward and what to leave behind. The trial was still months away. The healing would take years. But for the first time since this nightmare began, Kate Morrison felt like herself. Clear-minded, strong, ready to fight for justice, not just for herself, but for every victim who'd been told they were crazy when they were actually being destroyed. The Multnomah County Courthouse was packed the day of Marcus Blackwell's trial. Every seat filled. Reporters thus lined the walls. Cameras waited outside. The Golden Boy politician who poisoned his wife had become national news. Kate sat at the prosecution table in a navy suit, her hair pulled back, expression calm. She'd gained back the weight. The tremors were gone. The fog was a distant memory. She looked like what she was, a survivor. Marcus sat at the defense table flanked by Richard Sullivan and associates. He'd aged in 9 months, gray streaking his temples, lines creasing his forehead. Vanessa sat at a separate table with Elizabeth Warren. They'd turned on each other completely. Judge Margaret Coleman entered, 55 with zero tolerance for theatrics. We're here for the state of Oregon versus Marcus Blackwell and Vanessa Price. Are both parties ready? Yes, Your Honor, came the responses. Sarah Bennett stood for her opening statement, walking to the jury box of 12 carefully selected citizens. Members of the jury, this case is about the calculated destruction of a human being. For 8 months, Catherine Morrison Blackwell experienced confusion, memory loss, tremors, dizziness. Every doctor told her it was stress. Her husband played the devoted spouse concerned about his mentally ill wife. Sarah paused, making eye contact with each juror. But Kate wasn't mentally ill. She was being poisoned, systematically, deliberately, with substances designed to mimic anxiety. Why money? Kate inherited $2.3 million. If they could have her declared incompetent, Marcus would control that money to fund his mayoral campaign. Sarah held up evidence bags. Lithium orotate, an over-the-counter supplement, in the doses Marcus gave his wife, hidden in her morning smoothie. It causes confusion and cognitive impairment. Combined with this heavy metal chelation compound, it created symptoms indistinguishable from mental illness. She set down the bags. You'll hear medical testimony. You'll hear from the private investigator who risked everything to expose this crime. You'll hear from Kate herself. And you'll hear a recording of Marcus Blackwell and Vanessa Price discussing Kate's poisoning with casual cruelty. I'm confident you'll find both defendants guilty. Richard Sullivan's opening acknowledged the affair, called it a terrible mistake under campaign stress. He suggested Kate's symptoms were self-inflicted, a desperate bid for attention. He planted doubt about the recording's context and interpretation. Elizabeth Warren painted Vanessa as a young woman manipulated by a powerful older man. The prosecution's case unfolded methodically. Dr. Rebecca Mills testified about the toxicology results. A forensic accountant traced Vanessa's supplement purchases. Daniel Grant admitted planting the bug illegally, explained his desperation to save a woman no one believed. Then came the recording. Sarah played all 8 minutes. The courtroom went silent. She's still not getting worse fast enough. Let it taste off. She's so fogged, she'll forget by lunchtime. The doctor diagnosed anxiety again. He's doing our work for us. Once she's declared incompetent, Arizona facility takes her. We get the assets. Several jurors were crying by the end. On day 5, Kate took the stand. Sarah walked her through the timeline gently. What was the worst part? Sarah asked. Kate thought carefully. The worst part was doubting myself. Marcus was so convincing. Everyone believed him. My best friend thought I was relapsing. My father testified I'd always been unstable. The worst part was wondering if they were all right and I was wrong. If I really was crazy. But you weren't crazy. No, I was being poisoned. Once the poisoning stopped, my mind cleared. I could think again, remember again. I got myself back. Richard Sullivan's cross-examination tried to rattle her. Mrs. Blackwell, isn't it true you've struggled with alcohol addiction? I'm a recovering alcoholic, sober 5 years. I'm not ashamed. Recovery takes courage. Isn't it possible you relapsed under stress? The toxicology reports prove I wasn't drinking. They prove I was being poisoned with lithium and benzodiazepines. My addiction history doesn't change those facts. The defense called character witnesses who testified Marcus was devoted to public service. They called a psychiatrist suggesting Kate could have been self-medicating. They played recording portions out of context, but they couldn't explain the supplements in Vanessa's apartment, the receipts, the timeline matching Kate's symptoms, the recording capturing every detail. Marcus chose to testify against his lawyer's advice. I made mistakes, I had an affair, but I never tried to hurt Kate. Those supplements, Vanessa bought them. She told me they were harmless, for Kate's anxiety. I didn't know what was really in them. Sarah's cross-examination destroyed it. Mr. Blackwell, in the recording we hear your voice saying, 2 drops in her morning coffee. You weren't unaware. You were giving specific dosing instructions. That's taken out of context. Mr. Blackwell, you're a Georgetown law graduate. You understand conspiracy law. If you were truly unaware, you had a duty to report it. Did you ever tell anyone Vanessa was poisoning your wife? Silence. You didn't report it because you were in on it from the beginning. You planned it together, executed it together, and you would have gotten away with it if Kate hadn't been strong enough to survive. Vanessa invoked her Fifth Amendment rights and didn't testify. Sarah's closing was brief and devastating. The defendants thought they were smarter than everyone else. They thought they could destroy a woman, take her money, commit her to a facility, and no one would know. They were wrong. Kate Morrison Blackwell refused to believe she was crazy when everyone told her she was. Because one PI believed her enough to risk everything. Because one judge decided to dig deeper. And because 12 jurors are willing to see the truth. The defendants are guilty. The evidence proves it. The jury deliberated 7 hours. When they returned, Kate held her breath. On the charge of conspiracy to commit assault in the first degree, how do you find guilty? On the charge of aggravated domestic violence, guilty. Guilty on every count. Marcus dropped his head. Vanessa stared ahead. Kate felt a weight lift. Sentencing came 3 weeks later. Judge Coleman was merciless. Mr. Blackwell, you were elected to serve Portland. You were trusted with power, and you used it to systematically abuse and poison your wife for financial gain. I sentence you to 15 years in the Oregon State Penitentiary. Vanessa received 12 years. Both filed appeals immediately. Kate walked out into afternoon sunshine. Reporters surrounded her. Mrs. Blackwell, how does it feel to have justice? Kate looked directly at the cameras. It feels like the beginning, not the end. Recovery from this abuse takes years. But I'm grateful to everyone who believed me when I said I wasn't crazy. Justice matters. Truth matters. And victims deserve to be heard. She didn't look back. She just walked forward into whatever came next. 9 months after the verdict, Kate stood in a conference room at the Oregon State Capitol, adjusting her notes. Outside, protesters held signs, "Protect victims." Justice for Kate. Pass Kate's law. Inside, members of the Judiciary Committee waited for her testimony. The bill was simple, mandatory, comprehensive toxicology screening in contested divorces where abuse is alleged. It wouldn't have saved Kate, not entirely, but it might save the next woman who found herself being gaslit and poisoned by someone she trusted. Mrs. Blackwell, Senator Rachel Montgomery said, gesturing to the witness chair, thank you for being here. We know this isn't easy. Kate sat looking at the panel of legislators. Thank you for listening. I'm here today because what happened to me shouldn't happen to anyone else. Domestic abuse takes many forms: physical violence, emotional manipulation, and in my case, systematic chemical poisoning designed to make me appear mentally incompetent. She walked them through her story, focusing not on the emotional trauma but on the systemic failures. The doctors who diagnosed anxiety without running comprehensive tests. The lawyers who used her symptoms as evidence of instability. The judge who almost granted Marcus's petition for conservatorship because the gaslighting was so effective. If Judge Reed hadn't been suspicious, if she hadn't ordered that emergency toxicology panel, I would be in a memory care facility in Arizona right now. Marcus would have control of my assets. And eventually, when I was no longer useful, I would have disappeared. This bill isn't about revenge. It's about creating a safety net for victims who can't prove they're being abused because their abusers are too clever. The committee voted unanimously to advance the bill. It would take months to become law, if it became law at all. But Kate had learned that change was slow. Justice was imperfect, and the only thing she could control was her own voice. After the testimony, she met Daniel Grant for coffee. He'd gotten his PI license back, and his business had exploded with new cases. Victims of domestic abuse, people who needed someone to believe them when no one else would. "You ever think about going back to pharmaceutical sales?" Daniel asked. Kate shook her head. "That life is over. I'm starting a nonprofit, the Morrison Foundation for Abuse Victims. We'll fund toxicology testing for people who can't afford it, provide legal support for complicated domestic cases. I want to turn what happened to me into something that helps others." "That's good. That's really good." "Kate," they sat in comfortable silence. Two people who'd been through something terrible and come out the other side changed, but not broken. Kate's phone buzzed. A text from her father. "Dinner this Sunday, Jennifer will be there. We miss you. Love, Dad." The relationship with Paul Morrison was still complicated. He'd apologized, explained, groveled. Kate had forgiven him intellectually, understood his impossible position, but trust was fragile, and some cracks never fully healed. They had dinner once a month, careful conversations about neutral topics. It was something. Maybe someday it would be more. Jennifer Hart had apologized too, more times than Kate could count. Their friendship was rebuilding slowly. Honestly, they'd never have what they had before. That innocence was gone, but they had something new, forged in the fire of Kate's nightmare and Jennifer's guilt for not believing sooner. "I'll be there, Kate texted back. Then to Jennifer. "Sunday dinner at Dad's. You ready for more awkward, small talk?" "Always, at least the wine will be good." Kate laughed, a real, genuine laugh. She could do that now, laugh without the shadow of fear, without wondering if she was about to lose time, without the bog rolling in to steal her thoughts. That evening, Kate visited Marcus in prison. It was the first time she'd seen him since sentencing. He sat across from her in the visiting room, wearing orange, looking diminished. He'd lost weight, gained wrinkles, aged a decade in less than a year. "Why are you here?" Marcus asked, his voice flat. "I needed to see you then to understand if you ever felt guilty." "Every day, I feel guilty every single day." "Good." Kate leaned forward. "I want you to know something. Marcus, you tried to erase me. You tried to make me disappear, to turn me into a shell, to steal my mind and my money and my life. And you failed. I'm still here. I'm stronger than I was. I'm building something meaningful from the wreckage you created. And in 12 years, when you get out, I'll still be here, living my life, helping other people, being exactly the person you tried to destroy." Marcus looked at her with something that might have been regret or might have been calculation. With him, Kate could never be sure. "For what it's worth," he said, "I'm sorry. It's worth nothing. Apologies don't undo trauma, but maybe your imprisonment will prevent someone else from trying what you did. That's worth something." Kate stood to leave. Marcus called after her. "Kate, do you think you'll ever forgive me?" She turned back. "I don't know. Forgiveness is complicated, but I'm not carrying your guilt anymore. That's yours to live with. I'm moving forward." She walked out of the prison and didn't look back. 2 years after her collapse in court, Kate Morrison stood in a bright office space in downtown Portland. The Morrison Foundation for Abuse Victims occupied the entire third floor of a renovated building in the Pearl District, not far from the brownstones she'd sold after the trial. Fresh paint, modern furniture, walls covered with resources and hotline numbers. "This is incredible," Jennifer said, touring the space. "You built all this?" "The settlement from Marcus's estate helped. Judge Coleman awarded me $3.5 million in the civil suit, plus our marital assets. I sold the house, liquidated everything connected to that life, imported into this. Kate gestured to the conference rooms, the legal consultation spaces, the small lab set up to process toxicology samples. We've helped 43 victims in the last year, 43 people who thought they were going crazy until we proved they were being poisoned, drugged, or gaslit. Daniel Grant worked for the foundation now, running the investigation division. Dr. Rebecca Mills volunteered as their medical consultant, analyzing test results and connecting victims with competent physicians. Sarah Bennett sat on the board, providing legal expertise. The team Kate had assembled, the people who'd saved her, now worked together to save others. Mrs. Morrison, a young woman, stood in the doorway, mid-20s, thin and shaking. I saw your interview on the news. I think my boyfriend is doing what your husband did. I can't prove it. Everyone thinks I'm paranoid, but I know something's wrong. Kate walked over, taking the woman's trembling hands. Tell me everything. Start from the beginning. We'll figure this out together. 3 hours later, they had a plan. Toxicology testing at a lab Kate had vetted. Daniel would do surveillance, legally this time, documenting any suspicious behavior. They'd connect her with a lawyer who understood coercive control cases. After the woman left, Kate stood at the window, looking out at Portland, the city Marcus had wanted to run, the life he'd tried to build on her destruction. She'd taken that destruction and built something better. Her phone rang, a number she didn't recognize. She answered cautiously. Is this Kate Morrison, the woman from the Blackwell case? Yes. Who is this? My name is Amanda Sterling. I'm Marcus's cousin. I need help. I think my husband is poisoning me, and no one believes me. Everyone says I'm paranoid, but then I saw your story and I realized I'm not crazy. Please, I don't know who else to call. Kate closed her eyes, feeling the weight and privilege of survival. She'd made it out. Not everyone did, but she could use her voice, her resources, her hard-won knowledge to help others escape. Amanda, I believe you. Tell me what's happening. We're going to help you. As Kate took notes, mapping out Amanda's symptoms and timeline, she thought about the courtroom 2 years ago, the moment she'd collapsed, powerless and broken, the moment Vanessa had smiled, the moment she'd thought it was over. But it hadn't been over. It had been the beginning of something new. Not a perfect recovery, not a fairy tale ending, but something real and hard-won. She lived with PTSD, with trust issues, with the scars of what Marcus had done. But she also lived with purpose, with community, with the knowledge that surviving wasn't the end of the story. What you did with survival, that was what mattered. Later that evening, Kate met her father and Jennifer for dinner at a restaurant in the Alberta Arts District. Paul Morrison had aged too, guilt and cancer and time taking their toll, but his eyes were clear when he looked at his daughter. I'm proud of you, he said quietly. What you've built, how you've turned your pain into purpose. Your mother would be proud too. Thanks, Dad. Kate squeezed his hand. The relationship wasn't perfect. It would never be what it was before, but it was honest now, built on truth instead of illusion. Jennifer raised her glass. To Kate, for being the strongest person I know, for surviving, for fighting, for winning. They clinked glasses, and Kate felt something she hadn't felt in years. Not happiness. Exactly, peace was too simple a word, but maybe contentment. Maybe acceptance that life was complicated, that people were flawed, that trauma didn't have to define her, even though it had definitely changed her. To surviving, Kate said, and to making sure no one else goes through this alone. That night, Kate returned to her apartment, a modern studio with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Willamette River. She poured a cup of tea, herbal and caffeine-free, and sat by the window watching the city lights reflect on the water. Her laptop was open to her email. Messages from victims asking for help. Messages from reporters requesting interviews. Messages from legislators working on Kate's law, which had passed committee and was headed for a floor vote. The work never stopped. But that was okay. Kate had learned that healing wasn't about returning to who you were before. It was about becoming someone new, someone shaped by trauma, but not broken by it. She opened a new document and began to type. Her memoir, the full story of what Marcus had done and how she'd survived, would publish next year. The advance was generous, and every penny would go to the foundation. But more importantly, her story would reach people who needed to hear it. Women in abusive marriages who were being gaslit, men who didn't understand what coercive control looked like, doctors who needed to know when to look deeper than stress diagnoses. The title was simple, Not Crazy, a memoir of poisoning, betrayal, and survival. As Kate wrote, she thought about the woman she'd been 2 years ago, confused, frightened, doubting her own sanity. She thought about the woman she'd become, scarred but strong, damaged but not destroyed, a survivor who'd taken her nightmare and transformed it into a lifeline for others. She thought about Marcus, sitting in prison, and Vanessa, in a women's correctional facility 3 hours away. They'd both appealed their convictions. Both appeals had been denied. They'd served their full sentences minus good behavior, emerging into a world that knew exactly what they'd done. Kate didn't hate them anymore. Hate required energy she'd rather spend on helping victims. They were just two broken people who'd made terrible choices and would spend years paying for those choices. Their story was over. Hers was continuing. Her phone buzzed one more time. A text from Daniel. Amanda Sterling's husband just bought lithium supplements and chelation pills online. I have the receipts. We're going to save her. Kate, just like we saved you. Kate smiled, a fierce, protective smile. Good. Get me everything. We'll go to the police in the morning with a full case. Amanda won't spend 8 months suffering like I did. She set down her phone and returned to her memoir, typing the final lines of the last chapter. They tried to erase me. They nearly succeeded. But I'm still here, and I'm using every day of my second chance to make sure no one else has to fight this battle alone. Recovery isn't a destination. It's a choice you make every day. Choose survival. Choose truth. Choose yourself. And when you can't choose anymore because the gaslighting has you convinced you're crazy, find someone who will believe you until you can believe yourself again. We exist. We're listening. You're not alone. Kate saved the document, closed her laptop, and looked out at Portland one more time. Somewhere in this city, someone was being abused, gaslit, poisoned. Tomorrow, the Morrison Foundation would help another victim. Next week, they'd save another life. Next month, Kate's law might pass, creating systemic protections for people like Amanda Sterling. The work would never end. But neither would Kate Morrison. She'd survived her husband's attempt to destroy her, and she'd emerged with a mission to be the person she'd needed when she was at her lowest. To be the voice that said, I believe you when everyone else said you're crazy. She'd lost years to trauma. She'd lost her marriage and her job, her innocence. But she'd gained something too. Purpose, community, the knowledge that surviving something terrible gave you the power to help others survive. And as Kate turned away from the window and prepared for bed, she felt something she hadn't felt in the courtroom 2 years ago when she'd collapsed. She felt hope, not naive hope for a perfect future, but realistic hope that tomorrow would be better than yesterday, that the work mattered, that her voice could make a difference. The nightmare was over. The healing continued. And Kate Morrison, survivor and advocate, was ready for whatever came next.